Awesome. Now I'm recording. Sorry, guys. So what I'm going to do is pull up that discussion so that you can see the evidence. And the first thing that I want you to do as a class, you can either type it out through chat or you can speak up and say something. I want you to tell me, out of all those quotes that I put in that discussion, the quotes that you think are the strongest. What quotes do you think will do the best job of showing whether or not humor is an effective form of communication? So I'm going to share my screen really quick and then pull up a Google Doc. And what I will do is share this with the class later on. Can all of you see this? You can see the Google Doc?
Mine's still loading.
Yeah, mine's a bluish.
Okay.
Okay, I'm in.
Well, okay.
Got it?
Black screen of death. Hold on.
Okay.
All right, there we go.
Awesome. Evidence and reasoning in your humor essay. So I want to work with evidence first. You got to have your parts. For those of you that are just trying to summarize different things that happened in the article, or some of you are using personal experience or what you've noticed out in the world, and that's great. But if you can't be specific, then you're not proving that it actually exists. Your evidence shows the reader what you're talking about. It proves that what you're talking about actually exists, and it's not just you making something up or coming up with your own generalizations. The more specific proof you can use, that will make your argument stronger in and of itself. If you don't have proof, you don't have a leg to stand on, okay? So that's why your teachers are always asking for you to use quotes out of your stories, or out of your articles. So let me pull up, no. Now I'm gonna switch. I am going back to your course to pull up.
Go to the course.
Analysis of humor. So again, only a few of you have participated in this discussion yet, and I really want you to, because this is a great way to brainstorm before you actually have to write that essay. Okay. Let me move this down here, and then we can scroll up. So again, below are quotes from the Onion article and the Locavore article in Think Circa. Your job is to choose 3 quotes and explain whether or not those quotes prove that humor is effective when talking about important issues or not. Some of you haven't done this, though. You have to provide a separate explanation for each quote. You can't throw up 3 quotes and then say in one or 2 sentences, okay, so here's why all these quotes prove that it's effective. I need you breaking it down for each one, because each quote is very different from the other, okay? So, and also when you respond to each other, you can't merely just say, oh yeah, I agree, good quote, or disagree. You have to explain why. So here are some of the quotes that we've used, and I gave you a very long list. And you're welcome too. If you want to on your computer screen, you can exit out of the screen share and pull up this assignment as well. Okay, this is something that we can be working on together as a class while we're talking over Zoom. Okay, so some of these examples. But if progress is what we truly want, 20 seconds is simply not enough, not by a long shot. An issue this critical demands at least 45 seconds to a solid minute of real concentrated panic. If we're at all serious, we need to let ourselves occasionally be struck with grim visions of coastal cities washing away and people starving as drought-stricken farmlands fail to yield crops. And we need to do this regularly, every couple days or so, before continuing to go about our routines as usual.
Oh my God.
Can you pick up on what kind of humor are you seeing in these quotes?
Sarcastic. Just nothing but sarcasm in the face. That's it.
Sarcasm as well as hyperbole. I think I've used this term before. Do you remember what hyperbole means?
I've heard about it before. What is it? I got nothing.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah, I don't know.
Hyperbole is just exaggeration, to exaggerate, right? That's the literary term for it, but hyperbole is a really strong part of satire and sarcasm because it's through that exaggeration that we can make a point, and that's part of being sarcastic, right? Is sort of blowing things out of proportion. But a lot of times we do that for an effect, right? We do that to make a point. So the question is, let's do this first one together as a class. So say this is the quote we wanted to work with. This is the quote you wanted to use in your discussion, okay? So I'm going to put this here. Here's our first quote. Now you tell me, as a class, let's do this together. reasoning, right? First we have our actual evidence from the article. Here's humor. Here's the sarcasm that we're talking about. So what makes humor effective? Some of you have put, well, we know that this is effective because it's funny, so it keeps our attention. So what? If there's anything that you keep in mind when it comes to analysis, this is what I want you to think about. So what? Why is that important? It's effective because it's funny. It's effective because it gets our attention. So what? Why is that so important that it gets our attention? Why is that so important that it's funny? Why should we care about that?
So we don't be like bored.
So that you're not bored. So why does that make it effective communication?
I think it's because like, yeah, those people like interact. Maybe it like gives them like a general idea of like, oh my god, like I've never noticed. Like I'm saying, like gives people like information that they already don't know about. Like they might be so intrigued to it. Like, oh my god, like I didn't know that. Like tell me more. Like,
Yeah, but can't you do that with facts? Why do you need humor?
well, I guess because
Question.
like because with humor, I think it's like people are more interested in it because like with facts, like you already know, plus people may not be like so interested in it. It's like, oh, okay, like can you make it like to where we can understand it? Because not all facts can be like where people understand. So I think that's where humor comes into play. That way people understand like, oh, I get it. But at the same time, it's like it's getting their attention because it's to where they understand it, not to where it's like got a bunch of words thrown at their face and they're like, wait, what? Can you repeat that?
Okay. Anybody else want to add to that? Thank you, Stefan. Does anybody else want to add to that?
Humor allows you, like it's directly linked to memory. And it allows you to remember long term, so you'll never really forget it because it makes you laugh, and so you'll always remember.
I like it.
Now let's connect it to the next part of that question. So how does that make it effective communication? I really like that, Greg. Thank you. That was a good addition.
Well, if you're talking to someone and they don't understand what you said factually and they're just completely oblivious to what you just said, you use humor and use that as kind of like a buffer to, I guess, just tone down the importance of the facts. They might get it a little bit more.
Okay, it makes the facts more
tangible.
Okay. Easier to grasp. More
Like very easy to understand.
good. Okay. That's what I'm needing to see. This is a really, really, really good start. So let's actually make this more specific to this quote, because could we apply that to any of the quotes that we pick? What is it about this one saying, an issue this critical demands at least 45 seconds to a solid minute of real concentrated panic? Is 45 seconds a lot?
Yes.
No.
There's a lot. Yes. Have you ever spent 45 seconds alone?
You can do a lot in 45 seconds.
Right.
Okay. So is that an unreasonable amount of time?
No.
Panic?
To ask someone to reflect on something?
No.
So besides, I think what I like about what you're saying is that humor keeps people interested. It makes it more memorable, so they'll remember it. It makes it easier to grasp. But don't you kind of think the author's making fun of us at the same time?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's a criticism there. What's the criticism?
I'd say it's like making fun of like something bad, but like making it like more like understanding. Like say something like during the quote, like something bad is happening in real life. People take that, the author might take it and say, oh, this is what's going on, but he tries to make it like funny and people can actually understand what's going on through it.
Okay, let's connect it back to this quote specifically though. Marley, I think you wanted to say something.
I think he was kind of trying to like not make fun of us, but like say like, well, I guess criticize us in the way that we're not spending enough time.
Yeah.
And we're just kind of ignoring instead of time in to change it.
Okay, sorry Marley, we were kind of cutting in and out there, but yeah, what I picked up from that is that you're saying by saying instead of 20 seconds, why aren't you willing to spend 45 seconds? When realistically, I mean, yes, you're right that that can feel like a long time, but if it's under a minute, that's not a huge amount of our day. Yeah, I think there is a little bit of a criticism there about how much time do we actually spend thinking about some of these issues. So how is humor, or is humor effective in making those criticisms? Why use humor to do that?
So it makes a critical situation funnier, allows you to think better.
Why would how does humor allow you to think more about that criticism? How does humor help that?
Because it's like easier for people to understand. Like instead of big words, it comes down to like small. Like the big words are broken down through humor. Other people can like get into this, like what's going on, and like they don't have to keep questioning their heads like what's happening.
Okay, so that takes us back to it helps you understand the content, but do people like to be criticized typically?
No.
That's why we have that whole idea of constructive criticism, right? You have to be careful how you criticize someone, because if it hurts their feelings, then it's not really going to really go anywhere. They're just going to shut down. So how does humor help deliver a criticism? What does that do?
I think that maybe it helps it because, I'm echoing, because if you think about it, like if you're criticizing someone and you make it kind of funny, like they're gonna think like, oh, ha ha ha, and then they're gonna like have to think, oh wait, I just got criticized, or something like that.
Okay, I like that. I like what Pearl added as well through the chat. She said it takes away that intimidation of criticism. I agree with that. I think sometimes if you just say it directly, we think about the body language and the tone that goes into those criticisms, but if there's some humor added behind it, again, depending on how it's done, because we don't like to be laughed at, right? That can also be offensive, but depending on how it's delivered, that humor is a little easier to swallow by and I like, again, the way the intimidation, it allows you to laugh at yourself a little bit. And I think that makes it easier to come to those realizations, or maybe even to reflect on that criticism. Wow, well, how much time do I actually spend when it comes to thinking about global warming or other world issues or crises that are happening, right?
Yeah.
I think this is interesting, Rosa. I feel like it kind of tries to make you feel bad. I was a little bit behind on that one. Was that a comment about the criticism? Kind of a way of saying the author is criticizing us?
Yeah, I kind of feel like it makes just the quote makes you feel bad because it's like it makes you feel like you need to spend time, like more time on the whole issues that are happening.
I agree with that. And actually, I want to add that into our analysis. So here we're saying the humor makes the criticism less intimidating. I like Pearl's words there. Less intimidating. And it forces us to reflect on our own actions. Rosa, that's what I'm picking up from you, right? It's almost one of those, like when someone's teasing you and you go, don't do that. So then you start thinking about it. Well, I don't know, how much time do I actually spend thinking about this? That's a good question, right? But even in doing that, the author just got us to reflect on our own actions, to reflect on our behaviors, and to see how it applies to us. That's meaningful. For any sort of writer, if that causes the reader to do any personal reflection, you've hit your mark. You've done your job.
Amen.
Yep. I like that. Okay, but let's try the other side. Here's the thing about good writing, because some of you wrote papers saying that you don't think humor is very effective, and I think there was some very valid reasons for that. Understand, for strong essay writing, I would say not even just for essay writing, but to make a strong argument, you have to be willing to look at the other side, because sometimes we let our emotional biases get to us, and we may even see this in some other writing assignments we have later on. Sometimes our instant reaction, our instant opinion about a topic may be our opinion, but it may be a lot harder to prove than the other side of the argument. And so it's good to look at both to see, okay, well, what actually has more evidence and what actually has more proof? It's not just about my own emotional reactions. And so, especially because so many of us enjoy sarcasm and satire in a lot of ways, I think it's really helpful to look at that other side, to be like, well, okay, I don't know, maybe it's interesting and entertaining, but it actually isn't effective.
I'll be right back.
Right here. In The Local Wars Dilemma, in praise of the 10,000-mile diet, authors Pierre Desrochers, I'm not sure, and Hiroko Shimizu argue that driving a truck full of tomatoes 100 miles is less efficient and therefore more damaging than full of them halfway around the world. So here we have an objective fact. Here it's not about humor, but it's giving the information directly, objectively, very matter of fact, very professional sounding. So let's take a look at this second piece of evidence. So our analysis for this one, there isn't any humor. I think there's two ways that you could analyze this, because keep in mind you're also supposed to be using a counter argument as well. Because again, for a strong argument, you want to look at what the other side has to say, and then your job is to prove them wrong. That's what makes it the counter argument. You don't have to, I think some of you got confused with counter argument, where it was like, so I'm supposed to argue the other side as well. No, but you are supposed to show the other side. And that's what you would say. Some people would agree that humor is just for entertainment and takes away the seriousness of an issue, semicolon, right? However, comma, and then you state your own opinions because you're trying to prove that wrong. Or vice versa. If you want to prove that humor is great for entertainment, but it does take away the seriousness of an issue, nobody will put any real value behind it, then you would say some people believe humor is very effective because it keeps things interesting. Again, semicolon, however, comma, and then you share why that's not true. So your job is to prove the other side wrong, but you still got to show what the other side is saying. So let's look at this. Driving a truck full of tomatoes 100 miles is less efficient and therefore more damaging than shipping a plane full of them halfway around the world. Do you think that this is a more effective way of communicating serious, important information than humor?
It's kind of stated like a fact, not more as a criticism or anything really. It's just a flat fact, and they're not putting any humor on it. It's more just take it as face value.
Okay, so using a serious, objective tone. Do you know what I mean by objective? Does everybody know what that word means?
Yes.
To stay on point.
Well, or not to show a side, not to, to almost stay unemotional about something. You're not saying it's good or it's bad. Here's just the information. Using a serious, objective tone when communicating about important issues makes the information sound more factual. I think that's really important. Why? And so again, so what? Every time you're doing your analysis, every time you're working with reasoning, so what? That's the big question. So let's explain that. Why is that such a big deal that it sounds more factual? Why is that helpful?
Because I say it's like using like a caution type warning, but using information and using different facts to support it.
Yeah. What else? Help them out, guys.
Come on, I need help.
We all do.
Can't do this by myself.
Let me see. Did anybody
I'm
chat
sorry,
something?
Odo.
I was going to say something, but now I can't remember.
Oh God, man.
Right?
Hold on. Feel free to write something down as well, folks.
Oh, pen.
Funny on the chat.
A pen.
So if something sounds more factual, does that make it more persuasive? Does that make it more convincing if it sounds factual instead of it sounding like a joke?
Yeah.
How does that make it more convincing?
How does it make it more convincing?
I say it sounds like.
I say even if you don't agree with this side, I still want you to try to defend it. You don't have to agree with something to be able to see the logic in it or the validity in it. So Rosa, tell me more, because they're facts. So what? It's factual. You're right. But why is that more convincing?
Well, people don't really take opinions for what they are, because everyone has their own opinion. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion. But when it comes down to a fact, people will argue with facts, even though you can't really argue with a fact. It's just something that exists.
Okay, and thank you, Tiki. And to add on to that, Kishan's saying it, then people will take it more seriously. If it sounds like a fact, then people will take it seriously, and it's not going to be taken just as an opinion statement with what you're saying. And I agree with that. Pearl, it brings back the intimidation factor, which might make the person be more alert and serious about it. Okay. Oh, so it makes it sound more alarming. Is that what I'm hearing, Pearl? Because that's an interesting idea. I didn't think of it that way. If it does sound more alarming, then people will theoretically feel the need to act.
Yes.
She's like, okay, yeah. Why not? Let's go with that. It might bring about more panic. I didn't think about that. That's really interesting. Okay, I like all of those. So let's see. Let's put that in a sentence, guys. Help me out. Makes it sound more factual.
Oh my goodness, sentences. I can't even speak right.
If it sounds like a fact, I'm just going back to what Tiki had said as well. If it sounds like a fact, it feels less opinionated and can be taken more seriously. Does that sound all right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If it has a more serious tone, I'm connecting. So that's where I took what Tiki and Kishan had said. Now I'm going to put what Pearl added in there as well. If it has a more serious tone, then people will take the information. I already said more seriously. I don't want to be repetitive. Then people will
The information at face value.
Yeah, but I want to bring in that emotional. I want to bring in that emotional element of the alertedness. We use the word panic, right? But then there's maybe they'll be called to action. If it has a more serious tone, then people will feel the need to act.
Oh, I was gonna say that.
And fix the problem. Good. See how we did that? Now here's the other side of it. First off, guys, if I was reading any of this in your essays, your scores would be a lot higher. Notice that you're reasoning more than one sentence. Notice that in order to explain ourselves, and it kind of took a group effort, right? And sometimes it processing with other people, talking it out with other students is very helpful, which is why we have that discussion. But you need to be able to put those thoughts into words, to explain the significance behind it, not just, it's funny, therefore it's interesting, and so we'll read it. So what, right? Likewise, it sounds more serious. Take it seriously. How do you know? What do you mean by that? Well, seriously, what does that look like, right? Those are the things that you need to clarify. But the other thing you could do, is also explain how is this invalid, right? So maybe you wanted to use this quote from the locavore and you wanted to explain and write a paragraph explaining how this isn't as effective as humor. Can you do that?
Yes.
Yep. If you have one body paragraph that says, here's an example from the Onion article and here's why it's more effective. Here's an example from the other article and here's why it isn't effective. You can also prove your point that way as well. That's up to you. But when we're talking about analysis, this is what I want to be seeing, as well as the quotes. Notice that we took direct quotes from the article. It's a lot harder to argue with that. It's a lot harder to say that no, that isn't humorous or that's not funny. That does remind us. Some of you did say, I don't think that's funny at all. When I read this isn't funny. It's insulting. Explain yourself. So then what you're saying is, if something's insulting, it's not humor anymore, it's offensive. So then you kind of need to define what makes something funny. And if you want to do that, you can, you should. I think that makes for a great argument. But just keep in mind, guys, you got to explain yourself. You got to explain yourself. Any questions?
I actually